Seahawks fans celebrated their first Super Bowl win with a big parade today. Tonight, we look back at Vince Lombardi's faith in God and in the game. Francis fever is spreading around the world. How is all this attention impacting the church? It's known as the Russian Riviera. We'll take you to Sochi, host city of the 2014 Winter Olympics. And cities across America, including the nation's capital, are struggling to help homeless families. We'll show you their plight tonight. Those stories and much more just ahead on EWTN News Nightly for Wednesday, February 5th, 2014. Thank you for joining us. I'm Brian Patrick, and for Colleen Carroll Campbell, who's on maternity leave, looking at news now. A storm is pounding the Northeast tonight. Snow and ice covering large portions of the country, from Nebraska to Mississippi to Maine. Jason Calvi joins us now with more. Jason?
Brian, 12 inches of snow blanketing parts of Massachusetts, hundreds of thousands of people without power, and thousands of flights canceled. While it may be a winter wonderland for the kids out of school, for many, it's been a real headache.
A winter storm socks the East Coast today. Take a look at all this piling up in New York City. A half-foot of snow in the Big Apple. And in upstate New York, the National Weather Service predicted a foot or more of snow. It's the same storm that roared through the Midwest and lit up much of the country with winter storm warnings.
From Kansas all the way east, northeastward into New England. So we're talking about Kansas, Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, New York State.
Many schools and colleges are closed in the Hoosier State. 7 inches are covering Indianapolis. Here in Maryland, crews worked to restore power to 140,000 customers. Heavy snow fell earlier in the week. It's weighing down power lines and tree branches.
Do you worry that some of the trees will bring down the power and you might be out of power at all?
Well, that's natural around here.
And snowplows and salt trucks fought a sheet of ice in Baltimore and Washington, D.C.
And after the snow cleanup, the next major battle is the cold. And Brian, the wind chill in Wyoming could drop to 25 below zero.
When it's that cold and people without power, that could be really dangerous.
Really dangerous without the power, so people should definitely be checking on loved ones and the elderly, making sure everyone's safe and warm tonight.
Good reminder. Thank you, Jason. Well, some of the other stories our EWTN News Nightly team has been covering in today's world. 4 people are in custody on drug charges in New York City after police issued search warrants in 3 New York City apartments. Police found heroin and marijuana there. The arrest came after Oscar-winning actor Philip Seymour Hoffman was found dead Sunday in his New York City apartment with a needle in his arm and baggies of what appeared to be heroin nearby. Police say the arrests are not linked to Hoffman's death at this time. The Farm Bill is now ready to be signed by President Barack Obama. After 2 years of deadlock, the Senate passed the bill this week, a 62-38 vote. The newly passed Farm Bill includes a 1% cut to the food stamp program. The Farm Bill will be signed on Friday. New Jersey Governor Christie is speaking publicly for the first time in more than 3 weeks about so-called Bridgegate. Now he says he may have heard about the traffic jam leading up to the George Washington Bridge, but it didn't register with him as a major issue if he did. Christie stopped by Town Square Media's Ask the Governor on Monday to talk about the scandal.
The most important issue is, did I know anything about the plan to close these lanes? Did I authorize it? Did I know about it? Did I approve it? Did I have any knowledge of it beforehand? And the answer is still the same. It's unequivocally no. And in fact, no one's ever accused me of that. And that's the thing that I think the people in New Jersey care about the most.
The Italian judge who ruled over Amanda Knox's second murder conviction is speaking out. He says he suffered over the verdict, but he and the jury agree she was guilty. The judge settled on a motive that will be made clear in a written explanation. Knox's murder conviction in the 2007 stabbing of her British roommate has been reinstated. Knox sat down with Good Morning America to talk about the conviction.
I'm going to fight this until the very end. And it's not right, and it's not fair, and I'm going to do everything I can.
The Scottish Parliament has voted in overwhelming favor of a so-called same-sex marriage bill. Under this new bill, religious bodies in Scotland that wish to perform gay marriages can now choose to do so. However, the government says groups that are opposed to redefining marriage to include same-sex couples cannot be forced to solemnize such unions. Opponents say the bill erodes religious freedom. The first ceremonies are to take place by the end of this year. At least 18 people have died, including 5 children, as the Syrian government continues its aerial campaign against rebel-held areas of Aleppo this week. This follows a weekend attack that killed nearly 40 people. Syria's opposition points to the air raids as evidence that President Bashar Assad has little interest in peace, despite sending a delegation to Switzerland last week for UN-sponsored negotiations aimed at ending the 3-year uprising. More than 130,000 people have been killed in Syria since protests began in March 2011. In a related story this evening that you really need to watch now, this Syrian toddler is recovering with her family in Aleppo after being buried in rubble and dust, presumably from last month's bomb attack. As we mentioned, dozens died, including 5 children, but this little one suffered no obvious injuries. The frightening but uplifting drama was captured on video and uploaded to the internet. The video appears to be genuine and corresponds with journalists' reports of events in the area. It claims that 14-month-old Gina Galil was completely buried for about 3 minutes before being rescued. France is now coming to terms with its response to the genocide in Rwanda nearly 2 decades ago. That genocide took the lives of nearly 500,000 people. A Rwandan former intelligence chief appeared in a Paris courtroom this week, facing charges of complicity in genocide and complicity in crimes against humanity. That trial is expected to last 7 weeks. He's accused of instructing armed Hutu soldiers who manned checkpoints in Rwanda's capital to carry out the slaughter of the Tutsis. There are 27 other cases linked to Rwanda's genocide still awaiting trial in Paris. Hundreds of collectors from across the world have their eyes on Paris this week. They hope to bid enough to buy Pope Francis's motorcycle. That's right, his motorcycle. This 2013 Harley-Davidson, owned and signed by Pope Francis, will be auctioned off tomorrow. I don't think he ever rode the bike, though. The special edition Super Dynaglide was a gift to the Holy Father last summer from Harley-Davidson. Right now, estimates for the bike are between 12,000 and 15,000 euros.
Let's just say it's had an awful lot of interest. I've had inquiries from across the world with regards to this machine. In fact, I've never had more inquiries in a single motorcycle than this bike.
The money raised from the auction will go to a charity in Rome called Caritas Roma. It will help renovate a soup kitchen and hostel for the needy. A relic of Blessed John Paul II has now been recovered. The piece of fabric, which is stained by the blood of the late Pope, was found in the garage of one of the 3 thieves. The relic was stolen from a church in central Italy. The auxiliary bishop of L'Aquila, Giovanni de Colle, spoke about the thieves at a news conference, saying, "The forgiveness of John Paul II is total, as is ours." We already know Pope Francis will visit the Holy Land in May, but what's on his agenda? Well, Vatican officials say they're working on the itinerary.
The main celebration will be here in Bethlehem, in the Manger Square, Nativity Square, where also Pope Benedict celebrated the Masses in 2009.
Church officials tell us the Pope will spend 48 hours in Bethlehem and Jerusalem after visiting Amman, Jordan. Francis will meet with Palestinian and Israeli officials. He'll also visit Muslim and Jewish holy sites. The trip comes 50 years after Pope Paul VI visited the Holy Land. He met with the Orthodox Patriarch on that historic trip, marking a new chapter in Catholic-Orthodox relations. Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent, is 1 month from today. I know it seems early for this kind of thing, but dancers, musicians, and performers paraded down the Sambadrome in Rio de Janeiro earlier in the week, polishing their performance ahead of the annual Carnival. The rehearsals help ensure everything is in place for the official parades in early March. It gives performers a chance to experience the glare of the judges. Thousands participated in this technical rehearsal. It was performed in front of a huge crowd of people who took the opportunity to experience the spirit of the Carnival in advance. Rio's Carnival begins February 28th and it lasts 5 days until Mardi Gras, or Fat Tuesday. Well, the skates are sharpened, the skis are waxed, the athletes poised to compete, and soon fans across the world will cheer for their favorite Winter Olympians. The opening ceremonies are Friday in the Russian city of Sochi, a place rather unfamiliar to most of us. EWTN News Nightly's Anna Mitchell takes us there tonight.
Welcome to Sochi, Russia, the home of the 2014 Olympics and a winter wonderland. The Caucasus Mountains rise above this city of 300,000 people. During the summer, it's a paradise on the Black Sea called the Russian Riviera. It's a rare resort destination in a country that is famous for the cold.
Definitely Sochi has been off the radar for at least Western tourists. So we're definitely hoping that this will bring a lot of attention to the region and open it up more to Western travelers to go experience. Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin popularized Sochi in the early 20th century. The region is decked with beaches and gardens lined with palm trees. Adventurous tourists can ditch the beach and visit the former communist leader's summer home, now a museum. It's completely held in a way where it's all preserved. Exactly as he kept it. Sochi's warm coastal climate is also home to some of the world's northernmost tea producers, something you may want to sip while on the slopes above. Winter temperatures stay in the mid to upper 50s at the coast, but high in the mountains you will find cold and snow. And even if a dry spell hits, Olympic officials are ready. They've stored nearly 15 million cubic feet of snow under special insulated blankets, just in case nature doesn't provide enough. But amid the celebration of the Olympic Games, Sochi faces an unstable neighbor to its east in Dagestan. The region has faced ongoing conflict from Islamic terror groups, sparking a massive security response from the Russian government. In this city so heavily reliant on outsiders coming in, there's fear that an international crowd could create a terrorist target. For EWTN News Nightly, I'm Anna Mitchell.
Coming up, EWTN News Nightly's Rome correspondent Alan Holdren gives us the latest news from the Vatican. And you'll meet families here in Washington struggling to survive on the streets of our nation's capital. There's a lot of talk, even some controversy about a new book coming out today. Cardinal Stanislaus Dziwisz, a personal friend and personal secretary to John Paul II, is releasing the Pope's personal notes. Alan Holdren joining us from Rome to talk about this. Pope John Paul II actually ordered those notes burned. Alan, what happened?
Well, Cardinal Dziwisz has said in recent weeks that he didn't have the courage to follow through on that final will and testament of John Paul II. These are being published in a new book, only in Polish for the moment. 640 pages of personal meditations from Pope John Paul II. Dziwisz said that it would have been a crime to burn them. And all of the proceeds, he said, will go to a new memorial for John Paul II back in Poland.
Well, given the fact that John Paul II will be canonized a saint in just a few weeks, it will be certainly a wonderful thing to have those personal notes, although there are some who think that we should have respected the Pope's wishes. Turning to another issue, the UN strongly condemning the Vatican's policies on child sex abuse. What's the reaction there in Rome, Alan?
Well, we've had a pair of reactions initially here. They're still studying the document. It's 16 pages long, and it's very heavy. The Vatican press office released a reaction in which they said they're studying it, and they also lamented that the UN attempted to overstep their bounds and interfere in Catholic teaching on human dignity and religious freedom, they said. And also we heard from the Vatican's permanent observer to the UN in Geneva, Switzerland, who said that he was surprised at the document and said that he will be studying it with serenity to give a response eventually, knowing that the Church has nothing to hide.
And the Holy See reiterating its commitment to defending and protecting the rights of the child. Alan Holdren, we appreciate you being our eyes and ears there at the Vatican in Rome. Look forward to talking with you next time. It's been less than a year now since Cardinal Jorge Bergoglio was elected Pope Francis, the first pope from the New World, the first Jesuit pope. Catholics here in the U.S. are weighing in on the impact of the Holy Father's action, his popularity, his ideas, the impact on the Church. This week, a group of journalists and scholars discuss what's being now called the Francis effect. EWTN News Nightly's Wyatt Spencer is in our newsroom with details. Wyatt?
Brian, it's not easy for experts to measure the effect of Pope Francis' ministry here in the U.S. Are more Catholics going to Mass? Are Catholics who left the church coming back? Those numbers just aren't there yet, and it doesn't look like it's going to be until the summer until we have a clearer picture. But one thing is for sure, within the last year, the Holy Father has become one of the most popular figures on the planet. He's won fans from across the world, Catholic and non-Catholic, humans and non-humans. In 11 months, Pope Francis has been named Times Person of the Year, Esquire's Best Dressed Man, and a rock star, according to Rolling Stone. Many cite his humble attitude, simple lifestyle, and general inclusiveness. This week, a panel hosted by Georgetown University in Washington set out to sort through all the buzz.
It seemed very, very unlikely to me that this kind of revolution was possible.
Conservative columnist Ross Douthat, Vatican analyst John Allen, and church management expert Carrie Robinson talked with moderator John Carr Monday about Francis' appeal. Allen told EWTN News Nightly the best way to summarize this Pope's motto is in one word: mercy.
He wants to be the Pope who lifts up this concept of the Lord's mercy to the wider world. And I think mercy is in many ways the foundation of everything that he's about, from the nitty-gritty details of how do you restructure the Vatican Bank all the way up to how do we engage the crisis in Syria and beyond.
Pope Francis has started a process to reform several departments in the Vatican. He's raising the issue of poverty, challenging lay people and the clergy to better serve the poor. But Douthat says administrative reform at this point is not where the Pope has had the most impact.
There is a sort of blueprint for planning a reform, I think is basically the fairest way to put it. But really the change has all been at the symbolic level.
But even symbolic leadership, many say, promotes the Catholic Church in a positive way.
And certainly the Cardinal said, what do we need? We need a holy man, we need a pastor, and we need somebody who's going to fix this place so it does the work better.
In Washington, Wyatt Spencer, EWTN News Nightly.
It's really good to have Dan Burke, the Executive Director of the National Catholic Register, joining us from Birmingham in our studio. Daniel Burke, that's a coincidence, a strange coincidence, the co-editor of CNN's Belief blog. Daniel, good to have you with us. CNN is a news organization, okay? You're ratings driven. Why so much emphasis on Pope Francis?
I think, number one, that he's enormously popular. Whether we write pieces on our blog or whether there are pieces on television, we get a huge, huge audience. And I think part of that is driven by the fact that he's so relatable. People feel like they know him, they can kind of almost talk to him, whether it's about he's talking about his career as a bouncer or whether he's washing the feet of Muslim inmates, which he did earlier in his pontificate. He's just someone that people want to hear more about.
And they're hearing a whole lot from him. Dan Burke in Birmingham, thanks for joining us from EWTN there. This is Pope.
Great to be with you.
Some people are saying, where did this guy come from? I mean, he was known as sort of a low-key, quiet, humble man as Archbishop of Buenos Aires. Now he reaches this world stage of the papacy. Has he changed as Pope? Has his message changed? What do you think?
I think he is who he was in South America, and he is who he is, whether behind the scenes or in front, whether he's paying his own hotel bill or carrying his own bag. And that, I think, is in essence what appeals to so many people, is that humility and integrity, that he's trustworthy, personable, loving. It all comes across in a way that's very compelling.
So, Daniel, will CNN continue to cover the Pope, do you think, or do you think it's sort of old news now?
No, I think, if anything, it's going to ramp up this spring. There's several huge events. He's meeting with President Obama in March. We have the first anniversary of his pontificate, March 13th, which we're looking forward to. Later on in the year, he's going to be going to the Holy Land. So it's going to be, I think, even more coverage in the spring.
And Dan, back in Birmingham, do you think that you might be able to sort of share a little bit of insight with maybe secular reporters on how to best cover Pope Francis from a standpoint that would really connect with Catholics?
Well, I think the key is to connect with theologians who speak from the heart of the church. There are a lot of peripheral groups who may speak loudly in the church and appear to be authoritative, but really to stick with those people who understand the church, the history of the church, the theology of the church, and through them better understand what the Pope is attempting to convey, what's most important to us, And I think using that approach will bring a much more coherent, trustworthy message across all media.
All right, Dan Burke, Executive Director of the National Catholic Register. Thanks for joining us. We'll have you back on very soon. We appreciate you. And Daniel Burke, just from across the way here in Washington and CNN. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Be sure to catch The World Over with Raymond Arroyo tomorrow night right here on EWTN. Roma Downey, you might remember her starring in Touched by an Angel, and Mark Burnett, producers of the new film Son of God, will be with him. The film portraying the life of Christ from the Nativity to the Resurrection opens February 28th. The World Over starts at 8 p.m. Eastern tomorrow with encores over the weekend. Visit EWTN.com for times in your area. Well, America is called the land of the free and the home of the brave. But even here, not everybody has a home. In Washington, D.C. and other major cities, there's been an unexpected surge of homeless families needing shelter in this past month. As winter reaches its peak, keeping these moms and young children out of the bitter cold becomes a national responsibility.
Washington, D.C.'s primary homeless shelter is D.C. General. It's a former hospital that's been converted into a makeshift apartment building for the needy. Throughout the winter, 271 families at any given time cram into the cheerless halls and hospital rooms of D.C. General. People who live there say it's not easy.
There's no hot water in this building. The food is disgusting. Nobody's kids eat it. Everybody gets sick off stomach viruses.
They just brought sent papers about spread of scabies.
It's too many people just for one place.
Those who have lived there for months on end say the problems at the shelter run deep.
It's not like it's going to change, and if anything, it just needs to be shut down and redone.
This mom is grateful for work placement and daycare services provided by the government.
I feel like there's enough resources here, so, you know, it's all in what you make it.
In City Hall, council members said it's good news that D.C. General is full, and the city's response has been heroic.
And, you know, we're meeting the need.
By law, the D.C. government is bound to shelter homeless people from the cold. But with D.C. General at full capacity, the city is now resorting to recreation centers to house hundreds of families with kids. How did it come to this?
Affordable housing supply is a factor. After effects of the economic crisis of '08 is a factor. There's some long-seated problems here in the district that I think contribute as well.
One of those problems is that families who want to leave D.C. General say they can't.
I've been here for 15 months, and I have 6 children. I have a 2-year-old with epilepsy and a 3-year-old with autism, and they haven't moved me yet because they're telling me like there's no funding.
It's true. The uptick in families needing shelter is costing the city $20 million more than expected. But housing groups and the government are committed to keeping people out of the cold.
There will be shelter found. I really believe that.
Up next, we'll relive the Super Bowl as Seattle fans celebrate the Seahawks' epic win with a parade. Even though it was a really lopsided game, the 48th Super Bowl on Sunday was the most watched television event in U.S. history. 111.5 million people viewed it, and right before kickoff, Fox Sports aired a video featuring football legend Vince Lombardi's Catholic faith. The piece was narrated by none other than Cardinal Timothy Dolan of the Archdiocese of New York inside St. Patrick's Cathedral.
But what many don't know is that just like this St. Patrick's Cathedral, the life of the man who redefined football was rooted in an enduring faith and the love of his hometown, New York City.
We're joined tonight by Joseph Zwilling, Director of Communications for the Archdiocese of New York. Joe, you coordinated this effort between Cardinal Dolan and Fox Sports. How exciting it must have been for everybody involved.
It really was. It was a real blast having Fox Sports inside St. Patrick's Cathedral, having the Lombardi Trophy right there, and how exciting to be able to bring this story of faith from this very well-known football coach, the faith that animated his life, and bring that story to millions of Americans, people who probably didn't know that side of Vince Lombardi.
And Cardinal Dolan is very good on TV. He was not being interviewed here. He was actually doing television, anchoring this piece. You had to have been pretty proud of his performance.
Yeah, I think Cardinal Dolan is probably the most gifted communicator I have ever met. He's a wonderful writer. He's great on his radio show. He's a natural on television. And all that comes out of the person that he is and the warmth and the way he has of bringing people to him. That just comes through in his personality wherever he is, but it really translates well, I think, to television. And that's what I think draws so many people to him and through him to the church.
Joe, I was really taken by the Catholic figures being put on television in front of millions of people. That has to have a beautiful evangelical effect on the church.
Well, that's really what drew us to doing this. It's not about, getting somebody like Cardinal Dolan on TV. That's not what he's all about. It's not what the church is all about. It's really the core of evangelization, having this opportunity to speak to millions of people all across the country and elsewhere around the world that we might not ever reach, and just introducing them to faith, to Jesus, to what animates our life and our being, what animates our church, and extending through that medium the invitation to come learn more, come see what we're all about.
Well, thank Cardinal Dolan for us, and thank you, Joe Zwilling, joining us from New York tonight.
Thank you, Brian. It was great to be with you.
And that's it for tonight. Be sure to like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter. And you can catch the entire newscast or any portion of it on EWTN's YouTube page anytime you want. For all of us here at EWTN News Nightly, I'm Brian Patrick. Thank you for watching. We leave you this evening with songs of praise from street singer Andrew Lewis, our photojournalist Mark Irons captured.
How I love Jesus.
Praise actually keeps me motivated and it keeps me aware of, who my provider is.
This little light of mine.
It's not about being rich and having a whole lot of money. It's about doing what God has called you to do. This is what God called me to do, and I love what I do.